But today we have a really spicy topic, which is one that is just going to be spicy. We're going to be talking about brothels, digital brothels, and the economy of it and the purpose of it. And we're going to thread some stories into it, and it's going to be a pretty exciting one. Okay. So, to get started on this, hi Mirza. To get started on this, I always like to look at the historical and timeline of the part of the digital age that I'm discussing. You missed me? Well, here I am. So let's look at prostitution and brothels all together. So just it may be a trigger warning. I don't know if I need to establish a trigger warning, but we're going to be talking about a lot about sex, which is, somewhat taboo. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe people like hearing about it. But let's look at the historical. You married me. That's awesome. Let's look at the historical ancient civilizations. So we're going to start there. So first, in 2400 BCE, we have the Sumerian culture. Oh, you did? Energetically, did you? In the Sumerian culture, there was sacred prostitution that occurred at the temples of Inanna. Now, if you remember, and you've been watching my series. I did a little bit of a series. I did a discussion it's not on the digital age, but in my podcast, I did a discussion about Inanna. So Inanna was a goddess or a queen, and she willingly went to step into the underworld. So in her journey through the underworld, she had to take her crown off, she had to take her robe off, and she ends up, after taking all of her jewels and all of her, these pieces that she's taking off is like this identity power. So she's removing all of this, this power that she's been wearing, and she willingly steps into the underworld and is put on a hook for 3 days, and is tormented and shamed by the council down in the underworld. And so Inanna, going into the underworld, before she went down there, she had three different gods that she was like, if I don't come back, make sure you come for me. And so the god of wisdom ends up coming and retrieving her, but not before she has to or he has to make some sort of deal. So her deal, in order to escape the underworld, is to put somebody else in her place. So somebody else needs to go step into her place, and that's a whole thing. So so here in 2400 BC, Inanna is not only this like as soon as she comes back from the underworld, she sends her husband down. So her husband and his sister go half of the year in her stead in the underworld. And so, in these temples of Inanna, sacred prostitution was considered an economic and a spiritual it was considered economic and spiritual. So there's this spiritual connection to the gods, and then there's this economic, energy. Economy is just an energy exchange, okay? So moving on from the Sumerian culture, in ancient Greece, there was three different classes. So you had street workers, and then you had the educated courtesans, and then you had some temple workers. So again, it's in the temples, it's like the spiritual connection, But then there's also, some of the streets, some of the educated courtesans, like a higher end prostitute. And then you have the temple workers who are just there to, sit in the temples. The brothels in ancient Greece were state sanctioned in Athens and text. So it was a part of the economy. So it's, since early on, I'm just demonstrating how the brothel, how prostitution is just simply a part of the economy, but also there's this spiritual connection that goes with it. So I want to like really anchor that into as we move into the next part of the timeline as we're looking at this. Finally, the last ancient civilization is ancient Rome. So they had brothels which were legal and common. So it was just, it was just a norm. It was like, I know that in Vegas, it's like a norm to have prostitution and have these brothels and or ranches. They have those ranches down there. Where it's registered with the state. Well, this was also in ancient Rome. It was, you could be a prostitute so long as you were registered with the state and they were collecting taxes on it. As we move through time from these ancient civilizations, we move into this medieval period. So medieval Europe is what we're going to look at next. So the brothels here were regulated in many cities, like in Paris and London. They were considered a necessary evil in order to prevent rape and homosexuality in that medieval European time. So, they're looking at it like, we don't like it, but in order to prevent, these things from happening in our society, we want to make sure that they're there. So they were regulated in the cities. And next is in the medieval period, we had we look at Asia. So in Asia, you have these geisha girls, and then you have the courtesan cultures where, like in Japan and China, it was an offer of companionship, and then also sexual services were included in that. So it's often seen as a refined art. So again, you're looking at this being not just a part of the economy, not just a part of these religious situations, but you're also looking at it as being a part of their craft, because now it's companionship and sexual services that, the geishas and the courtesans in the Asian world are offering. So moving from the medieval period into the Renaissance through Enlightenment period, now we have brothels as a more class stratified system. So in cities like Venice and like Amsterdam, courtesans actually held considerate power and cultural influence in these, in these cities. They were looked upon highly. People enjoyed going and being with them. They offered something to the culture that was needed. So, there were low class, but then there was higher class. Like you can raise to great fame and be highly desired in your brothel, or just it's almost like having your own Yelp review back in the day. Okay, then from Enlightenment to the Industrial Revolution, you have, in the Industrial Revolution, we've been talking about it quite a bit. This is the late 1800s, and post Civil War, you have this mass urbanization that's going on. So we talk about transcontinental railroads, we talk about the urban expansion, the manifest destiny, really moving westward. Everybody is looking for their place. They're looking for riches. They're looking for gold, any of these really precious minerals to get rich. And so the rise and the mass urbanization of this led to a ton of unregulated brothels. So the brothels are often tied to poverty, where women are going in there and no they have no last resort. Maybe they don't have any family. Maybe they lost them in war, and so now the women, left to nothing else, like they're subjected to go in because they need to eat, they need to have a place to stay, and so being in that brothel was giving them a little bit of that survival things that they needed, but they had to exchange their feminine energy and their bodies in order to pay for that. With the Industrial Revolution, you have this refined Victorian mentality. So if you know about the pre-Civil War South, it was still very Victorian. You almost had this knights and ladies, and you had the balls, and you had the dances, and you had the same culture that was extracted from Europe, but it was, in this Southern culture where they had huge plantations, and, the ladies were cared for in a certain type of way. But the Industrial Revolution and that Civil War put, a really piercing arrow through the Victorian morality. But people still held that morality. And that clashed with the reality of the sex world that was happening, the unregistered brothels. One of my favorite movies is Gone with the Wind, and a couple of the characters. So Scarlett is coming from this Victorian morality, even though she's got her own sins that are being like she's working through in the movie or in the book or in the story. She sees this other woman who is this high class brothel lady. She works in as a high class prostitute, and because she has this reputation of the Victorian community not wanting her in, not wanting to associate themselves with her, because if they do, they lose reputation within their own communities, and reputation was huge in this Victorian morality that is being, that they're like kind of clashing with. And gosh, what's her name? It's not Kitty. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna look it up really quick. All right. Where is she at? She's important. Maybell? Nope, not her. Belle Watling. That's who it is. So Belle is the character who is the prostitute in the movie of Gone with the Wind, and so Scarlett won't associate herself with her, but she still is part of this Southern culture, but not a part of the Victorian thought process of the Southern culture. She's given rise to and wealth and everything, and she lives with really beautiful, colorful curtains and velvets and softness and just a really feminine environment, and then offers champagne to the gentlemen that come and hang out with her in her area with her ladies. And so she's this brothel owner that is catering to high class men. So you see this class stratification during this time, which is, a very real thing. It's not anything new. It just was the lot for her existence. So you see the clash of both of these realities happening. And then moving on from the Industrial Revolution, now we're going to move into the 20th century. So in the 20th century, in the early 1900s, prostitution became criminalized in many places under this moral reform movement. A lot of people may remember what was it? It's like the right. Oh my gosh. Anyways, it was like this big religious movement, this big religious Christian movement. It was like very anti anything against against the Christian religion. The religious right is what they called it. That's what it is. So with that religious right that really came out of the 1900s, it was really against like anything that could mar the culture, anything that was seen as immoral, was being attacked. So many of you, if you grew up in the 90s, you'll remember not just prostitution, but music that had curse words in it, music that had explicit lyrics. There was these pushes of, let's create a moral society, but it was like under this religious, forceful hand. And so prostitution became criminalized under that. In fact, for the longest time, I think the only place that I can think of in America where it was still legal was in places like Las Vegas. And, I don't know of any other places of note that I could remember. I was a young child back then in my, not even my teens when all this happened. But you're looking at these moral reform movements that happened in this 1900s period. So, but moving on from that, then we get into this like mid-century era of red light districts and government regulated areas like in the Netherlands versus the underground sex networks. So there's underground sex networks where people are, doing whatever, getting up to no good. I don't know. And then also in the 20th century, in the 1900s, you have this rise of call girls. So you can call on the phone and talk to a call girl over the phone. The phone sex is a huge thing at this time. And softcore print media like Playboys and Penthouse are on the rise, and they're kind of being distributed. You can get them at the convenience store. It's like behind, well, for a while it was available to anybody's eyes, anybody, that was in that vicinity of that magazine. But eventually there came, where it like just showed the top of the Playboy or the Penthouse or the Hustler or whatever. But you have this like huge magazine availability. And, it was a market because people were buying it. So that's the historical timeline. And now as we look at that historical timeline, we're just going to compare it to the digital brothel and the modern porn economy. So there's this shift from analog magazines, call girls, I guess, are a little digital, but it's still, you're talking to a human, meeting in person, to the shift to online. And of course, with the internet, not only is there, it really starts as like this funny and dark, seedy thing when new worlds are built. Like even in the metaverse, like the VR metaverses that are being created, it starts as funny, dark, think like YouTube. People were going on there and they're just like they were able to like broadcast anything. They're broadcasting anything. And so in the shift here, we're looking at the emergence of Pornhub, YouPorn, RedTube, which explode with free user updated content. So the users are uploading their content into these platforms, the apps or the platforms, websites. And so in the early 2000s, with your phone, by 2007, with your phone, you're able to like access all this free porn. And a lot of it is user updated, and so you see this shift. Then the other thing that happened during this time is you have these cam sites. So cam girls, cam sites come up. So My Free Cams, Chatterbaits introduce interactive live sex as a service through these digital platforms. And then the other thing is you have the porn metadata mining. So the data mining that happens, the metadata that is extracted from these porn sites and cam sites and everything that's all digital, it looks at the likes, the watch time, the preferences, and then it builds your preferences in this targeted sex-based marketing. So now data mining is targeting you with, hey, do you want to see this crazy thing? Hey, do you want to see that crazy thing? And remember when I was talking about the dopamine, when your dopamine is spiking, it quickly goes from just being, maybe it's just a basic thing that you like to watch on the porn site. And then because we're always seeking novelty, then you have to add a little bit more into it in order to get that same dopamine hit excited reaction. And so over time, you're looking at the even more crazy and even more novel and even more exciting. But pretty soon it goes from being this basic thing to being something that's, pretty wild and crazy. If you took a step back and looked at the trajectory of what is my watch, what is being targeted at me, am I what am I allowing to be dopamine farmed from in my attention and in this exchange of energy, and we'll talk a lot more about that in a bit. So then moving on from this shift from analog to online to where now like the pornography and the women are available in a digital platform. In 2016, OnlyFans comes on to the scene. So 2016, OnlyFans is on there. This is what I would consider the digital courtesan economy. So this is kind of like being in that ancient Greece and ancient Rome, or even in probably more so related to the Enlightenment, to the Enlightenment, Renaissance to Enlightenment era, where you have these courtesans that are holding a lot of power because, and they also have cultural influence because now so many people might know that courtesan who's offering, and so she has like all of the leaders of the army come to her, and so now like not only is she desirable in that function, but now like all of these leaders are coming to see her and just be in her presence. So the architecture is this subscription-based platform where creators offer images, they offer videos, they do messaging, they do pay-per-view. And, it's really funny because sometimes people will come on to my stream and I'm like, I'm on YouTube, but they'll be like, stand up, let me see the full body view. And so they're like demanding to see my whole body. And I'm like, this isn't OnlyFans, this is YouTube. And I am, I'm not here for to be, bossed around under your dictation. I'm here offering a really valuable service to the people that are watching. So you can see how the OnlyFans culture of this pay-per-view, of this do these things, let me see your feet, let me see your whatever, show me a little bit more, this dopamine excitement that people can come on and be really like, they want to be fed something from the user on the other side. And so you can see how dominant this economy is, where I'm like, I'm not on OnlyFans. If you want that, you can go to OnlyFans. Like, it's offering that service for you, but you have to go and pay for it. But the energy exchange of this economy it's a norm. It's been around since the beginning of civilization. So it's not anything new, and I'm not promoting OnlyFans, and I'm also not like taking it apart either. It's a part of our civilization culture, and we have to figure out how we're going to operate within that. So some of the services that are offered in this like digital courtesan economy are, you can get custom content. You can get this experience, like this girlfriend experience or this boyfriend experience. I think men mostly use it. I don't know what the ratio or the percentages of the clients that are paying for the content, but I would imagine like a lot of it is men, because men typically are a little bit more visual than they are mental, where women just want to be mentally stimulated, and then that opens up the body. And then some of the services are financial domination, FinDom. So this is where men will go onto a site and they want to be abused financially, and they're like, the dominatrix will be like, okay, pay me $200. That's not enough, little piggy. Pay me $300, and keep on extracting. And the men that are into that kind of domination get off on it. Like that's their cup of tea. That's their sugar that they like. And so they're getting this dopamine hit of paying the financial dominatrix, paying her, and he's getting a pleasure and she's getting paid. And that's what the digital courtesan does. And then other services are having live chats. So having these one-on-one live chats with men, in just servicing them. Dominatrix stuff isn't like a new thing. The dom and subculture has been around for quite some time. I remember in the 1990s, it was kind of a big thing. You would see like the ads in, your weekly city newspaper. So like I remember in Portland Weekly, you would see like all of these different ads for different things back when it was still a little analog. But it was, shifting into this online bit. So with the digital courtesan economy, the value prop is that the creator has a little bit of autonomy. They can come on and be a certain identity. So if like I was going to go on OnlyFans and I'm going to be a dominatrix, I would assume that dominatrix identity and then curate my avatar, my identity there to target a certain audience, and then offer them whatever. I'm not doing that, but there's a little bit of autonomy. It's a little bit safer. You just you go on there and you do your thing. There's no middlemen except for paying the platform. Hi, Mike. There's no middlemen. Usually like with prostitution, you have the pimp culture, and or somebody there that's offering protection or some sort of service. So a lot of the times, with like pimp culture, and what is his name? Iceberg Slim, like wrote a book about it. I need to get that book. But so Iceberg Slim is like, oh yeah, this is how it works. It's a whole hierarchy. It's, a man caring for all these women underneath it. It's the same as a brothel. A brothel usually has this madam, and the madam is caring for all of the women underneath, just making sure that she's safe, that her needs are being taken care of, that she's being fed, that she's, keeping up with her hygiene, or however, depending on whatever that brothel is. So the pimp is the same way. A pimp is going to be, decking out his women and making sure that she's keeping up with her quotas. So just really like managing the women. And, for all it's worth, women women like having that, like, I don't want to say like having that control or having somebody control that for them, but it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, even though it might be coming from a place of trauma, or maybe it's just something that they like doing. It's just the dynamics of all of these brothels or these things are all different. But when we're looking at the digital courtesan, you don't really have the middleman. You're in control of, whatever your autonomy is, and maybe you have to pay like the OnlyFans a certain percentage of whatever money is flowing through there. The value proposition here is that fans feel connected to the person that they're seeing on the other line. And, that's probably true here. A lot of people that are watching this, they probably feel connected to me as a host, and I'm speaking to them stuff that they're like, wow, this is really great content. I really like hearing this. It's expanding my mind. And so I feel connected in that. But remember, we can also do that with the replica, what do you want to call them? The relationship chatbots. You can get connected with them. You can get connected with ChatGPT. You just have to be really cognizant of where you're placing your energy. So, in the digital courtesan economy, fans feel connected to the woman that they see on the other side. And then there's also the parasocial intimacy piece, which we talked about yesterday with the case study where there was a man that fell in love with his replica AI girlfriend and was so in tune. He had a hard time with face-to-face interactions and connecting with real life people. So this happens a lot, and we'll talk about that trend, because it is something that does happen. So with the brothel 2.0 being like in this digital, how are you today? I'm good. I kind of popped on a little early because I had to go to Portland and see my uncle. He's in the ICU. But there was a movie like that. Oh, tell me what movie it was. Let me see if it's on my thing, on my streaming platforms. All right. So when we're looking at the digital courtesan economy, we're looking at key trends. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, he's been in the hospital for over a month now. But yeah, I just want to go and check in on him and make sure he's doing good. So some of the key trends that are going on with this digital brothel is the trend of virtual girlfriends and AI companionship. So think replica, Karen AI. You have this digital intimacy, but no physical exchange. It's like you're still having this intimate relationship, but you're not able to exchange it. And that has a really strong effect on the dating world. So in the dating world, I talked about it. You have this like expansion of people available to match with, and so you're trying to digitally mine and data match to somebody who you might like or find interesting. But you're trying to create this digital connection, and then piece it into the real world, organic, in real life experience, and grow it into this relationship, which is, I mean, a lot of people are finding very, very difficult. Oh, her. Oh, somebody mentioned that. I don't think it's on any of my platforms, but who mentioned that? There was somebody on here that mentioned it. Or maybe it was, I don't know. Now I can't remember where it was at. The other key trend is looking at how this porn is prana farming. Your life force is being farmed. That dopamine is being farmed in these pornography farming, energy harvesting. I don't even want to call it a campaign. It's just energy harvesting. Like you're plugging into a matrix. And if you remember in the matrix, they're all in these little pods and they're like jacked in. I don't think we're too far from that really being true. I think it is true, but it's not even, you don't even have to be jacked in with wires anymore. Now it's just your attention is being literally farmed wirelessly, because you plug into your smartphone, you plug into your laptop, you plug into the iPad, and you fire up the pornography sites, you fire up OnlyFans, and you sit there and spend X number of hours in front of it. And it doesn't even have to be that. Like, that's an extreme like area, but you can do it in the social media realm. You can do it in the movie realm, in the TV show realm. Like, all of these things are wirelessly farming your prana, your life force, even video games. Like, I realized, I really like playing Zelda and I really like playing Minecraft, but I realized that it was prana farming me in Minecraft or in Stardew Valley. Like, they're seemingly innocent games, but the things that are there are things that I could be doing in real life. So I consciously know that when I fire up the Minecraft, that I'm going to be farming in there, but I'm also going to be farmed. Like, my attention, my energy is being farmed when I go and play that. So, I'm consciously seeing how that is taking time from me. People do this all the time. They're just constantly online in their open metaverse gaming world, and they're working together with other people and team working, and their kids are at home and their kids are just like, plugged into the television, plugged into their video game. And so, mom or dad are plugged into their video game on their device, whatever it is. And then the children are now just plugged into the video game, plugged into YouTube, plugged into the television shows, just plugged in, and they're not having like real life face-to-face human interactions. And so what does that do to the cognitive functioning as children grow? So you're being energy harvested. And then in the pornography, prostitution, brothel realm, your energy's harvest is from arousal. Like I said, it's now you have to seek that next novelty. Maybe missionary isn't enough, and now you have to go, to doggy, and then to the next one, and then to the next one, and then the next thing you know, you're pay-per-viewing, watching the most craziest things that you can on OnlyFans in order to get the proper dopamine hit, because now just watching this basic form of what you used to find fun or exciting is no longer exciting for you. Now you have to have this even crazier thing, and the woman has to look this certain type of way, and or man, whatever, or you've been engaging with this bot in this fantasy world. And we're going to talk a lot about fantasy because that is the definite thread here. You're engaged in this relationship with a chat bot, and so there's this fantasy that is coming alive in it, because the chat bot's not going to say, I don't feel comfortable with that. No, it's going to go there. It's going to go there. And then the other thing that, as we're looking at this, is We're looking at the emotional engagement of it. Maybe you go onto a metaverse and you're playing this game and there's other people on the other line. I know it happens quite often. Like you're in one part of the world, there's somebody in the other part of the world. You start talking with each other, and then over time, you develop this connection with them because you've been living in this avatar world together, and now you've developed a connection with them. Our brains don't know if it's in real life or if it's digital in real life, or if it's this chatbot, this AI chatbot that's giving us the things that we want in our relationships that we're connecting with. So it doesn't know the difference between organic. It doesn't know the difference between organic and digital, and then the AI chatbots. It doesn't see the difference. It just registers everything as the same. So the other part of porn farming, the energy's harvesting, is the commodified attention. So, you might be looking at, oh my gosh, this one got, 500,000 views and I haven't seen it before. What is going on here? What am I missing? Everyone is watching this. There's a lot of attention on it. I hear about stuff. Like, I'm not on OnlyFans. I don't go on to, like, the porn sites or anything like that. Like, it's been years and years. And even, when all of this stuff was kind of, like, coming out and it was novelty, there were some things that I would watch and it was, like, really shocking. My system. I could feel the shock of my system in engaging, just in paying attention to it. But it was like, you guys have probably heard of, like, Two Girls, One Cup. That was a huge phenomena that came through, but that was like this novelty thing. And people watched it, and even though they got grossed out, it was still like paying attention to it, right? So you have this commodified attention. I've never seen it, by the way. Thank God. I never watched it. But it's attention. And then all of a sudden it's like this cult classic phenomena. And people are like, oh yeah, I saw that. And now you see even crazier stuff than that. Like, there's just wild things. And it sticks in your head. And my mom, she used to say, be careful about the things that you watch. You don't want those memories popping up when you get older. You don't want it to think about that. Okay? And then the other key trend that's happening is virtual reality porn. So this is immersive sex, and I'm sure you guys have seen maybe a reel that pops up and it's like, this guy, and he's, you can obviously see he's got his Oculus and his little hand, I don't know what they're called, but they're like little hand things so that you can move around and push the buttons. But you'll see like him, and he's like performing, whatever it looks like, and then you'll see like another person, and they're in a different position, getting some sort of satisfaction out of that. But you have this Oculus and Meta and platforms like Bedoink VR or VR Bangers, and so now you're looking at having this in VR form, that the sex is moving beyond just watching somebody do something. Now it's interactive. Now it's immersive. Some of the other things that we talked about were like deep fake porn. So AI generated faces that are superimposed on bodies, which has this, already we're kind of in this ethically murky situation, but now we're in this even more ethically murky situation where people's likeness can be taken and then superimposed into this AI deepfake, and now people can go watch AI generated pornography. Next thing is NFT erotica. So, the scarcity in sex work via blockchain is also happening. So there's digital ownership of your nudes, of moments, etc. Whatever can be, done in the NFT space. Now erotica is automatically going to be, put into that. So you're going to see some of that. The other thing is crypto brothels. So sex workers are not only getting paid through these digital courtesan sites, but they're also getting paid in Bitcoin or Ethereum for privacy. And so now that whole cryptocurrency world, that financial world, is opening up. I don't think that it's really private, but it's to be contested. Let's say that. The next thing that happens in this digital, situation is you have remote controlled sex tech. So remote controlled toys that are integrated with apps and webcam shows. So it's like this teledildo basically, and so the person on the other end can operate the functions of it, and they get to watch the reaction. So they're this new immersive sex technology is being introduced. And then obviously, we talked about pimps. The agencies are now these digital pimps. And so the agencies are managing multiple OnlyFans profiles. I don't know how many profiles are there, but it's all under this one giant umbrella. The other thing that we can chat about, or that I'd like to chat about, is like Instagram models, maybe even a little bit on YouTube. This maybe TikTok kind of fits into that category. But they all also fall under this ecosystem, this digital courtesan ecosystem. And sorry, I had a pop up there. So they're falling into this digital brothel ecosystem. I might have to make an OnlyFans and try my luck. I don't know. Well, a lot of people joke about it. Like Feet Finder is a huge thing. Like I said, it's like the internet is almost this gateway drug to any of your desires being fulfilled. So you might be fulfilling somebody's desire out there. So how the Instagram models fit is we have the parasocial courtesan model, yeah? So IG cultivates a carefully curated fantasy. It can be hyper feminine, it can be hyper masculine. I think about it's on Facebook and Instagram, like sometimes it'll pop up into my feed where women are like ogling over the guy with the gray sweatpants on, and you can see his member kind of through it. I can't remember the guy's name, but he had this squirrel that he was taking care of, but he was also, shirtless and wearing the gray sweatpants. And so he was not only like trying to show this cuteness, like getting this kind of soft, sensitive vibe, but then also there was this drive for women to just like stare at his gray sweatpants situation. And So, when I say like there's a little bit of hyper masculine aesthetics, that's the kind of stuff that I'm thinking about. Think about like the Thunder from Down Under, women are wanting to go and ogle these men, just as, and maybe there's a little bit of, homosexuality, or even, I think that that's probably a little bit more likely, but they're becoming like these thirst traps. They're showing these unattainable lifestyles. They're showing, obviously, the thirst trap, and then there's like suggestive content, like I said, with the guy that had the squirrel. He's like suggesting content. It's not necessarily super sexual, but because it's suggestible, people are like, oh my gosh, like almost like I want to destroy that innocence that he's, showing here. And so they watch because they're like, oh my gosh, I totally wrecked that guy. Or like or maybe the woman's like, I totally want to be wrecked by that guy. Whereas like in the hyper feminine world, you're also looking at it from a different perspective of like, I really have this desire to have that fantasy connection with her. So they're these thirst traps. So that can happen on the Instagram, it can happen on Facebook, TikTok, whatever function is like kind of providing that service. The result of this is having these one-sided emotional bonds with people. One-sided emotional bonds with these digital identities, these digital courtesans, or digital courtiers. And you're looking at this often is a time investment. Like I said, it's attention. You're not only are you paying attention, not only paying financially and, stimulating that digital courtesan economy, but you're also paying in attention. And, as I always say, I think attention is the most valuable currency you have. So just be really, really careful about where you're paying your attention to. Like I said, they're paying money for this content, and they're paying attention. And in return, what you're getting is dopamine hits, and simulated connection. You feel connected to that person on the other end, but it's simply this fantasy connection. But it's a simulated connection. It's still this like metaverse style link. And then obviously the dopamine hits that are coming. You're getting that dopamine hit. So now you're like, oh my gosh, if I go on here, I can see this girl's, bottom. She's going to show it. It's a pay-per-view. I just have to pay, $5 to go view it. I'm going to go view it. I want to see what it looks like. Or maybe, you're sitting with some friends and they're like, oh my gosh, I saw the craziest thing the other day. It was this girl and she was doing this wild, crazy thing. And then your dopamine gets excited, like you get a hit of dopamine. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm only imagining it, but what is it like to truly see it? And so you have this dopamine hit and then the simulation to connect to it. Now you not only are imagining it in your fantasy, now you want to see that fantasy fulfilled in real life, even if it's just watching this digital situation happen. So the parasocial courtesan model is not anything new. It's very much mirroring the Renaissance to Enlightenment stage, where the courtesans of that time were they were basically getting a lot of this cultural influence, right? They were getting power because now they're not just connecting with the everyday guys from a lower class. Like there's different classes of brothels now. And so the same thing goes in this digital space. you have the same courtesan dynamics. There's women now who are super, super popular on OnlyFans, and it's only because of their OnlyFans content that they're popular. So they gained power through the exchange of these simulated experiences with their fan base. They gained a lot of money in that way too. So the courtesan dynamics that were in, these temples, in the brothels, in prostitution, areas wherever in time it was in the past, there is a certain presentation. So if you're a lord and you're like, I want to go to a brothel, and Game of Thrones had tons of brothels in it, so you can only imagine, that was played out in that show. But in there, it was the presentation mattered, the lighting mattered, the curtains mattered, the environment mattered, the vibe mattered. And then there was a certain allure, like the women would come out and they would be presented. And so, the men would choose from which of these ladies do I want to, maybe not just one, maybe it's two or three or four, however many, depending on like how much they were willing to pay. So there's presentation, and then there's the allure, and then an emotional teasing that goes on with it as well. So, men, they kind of want a little bit of playfulness out of that. In this brothel, the digital brothel, they want a little bit of teasing that goes into it. They want to be lured into it, magnetized into that digital identity of, what is her personality like? Is she giving me eye contact? Is she laughing? Is she stimulating me? Am I being aroused by her? So there really is a lot of stuff that goes into that. So the dynamics are very much the same as in the ancient civilizations, or in the, in the timeline of the brothel. But now we have it all on a digital interface. And then those techniques are used to maintain power. They're to extract value from their patrons, value from their clients, they're paying patrons that are looking at them and saying, I am connected with that person and I want more interaction. And so now they'll like seek more. Okay, I want to learn more about you. I want to see you in action. So the next thing with kind of the Instagram model, or maybe even Facebook, or whatever situation, the funnel is through this monetized platform. So Instagram becomes this teasing layer, but it's not the final destination. So you're scrolling through Instagram, you're seeing all these models, you're liking their pages, and maybe there's one that really sticks out to you. So that tease, that image that you're seeing on Instagram, now you can go to their OnlyFans. Now you can go to their Fansly. Now you can go to their Patreon, or maybe even have Snapchats with them. And so the tease layer is like these basic social media functions, and then it's funneled into these paying platforms. So, other people can use their beauty and use their allure in order to not just put them to their model links on their digital brothel platform, but they'll send them to their Amazon wish lists. They'll send their Cash App. They'll send their Venmo. They'll send private Telegram chats. They're going to figure out how to reach you and say, hey, pay me money because I'm pretty. So think of like IG models as like this brothel lobby. It's this lobby where patrons get a taste of what that model has in store for them, and then they get funneled into the higher paying experiences. So these are kind of like the Instagram, the Facebooks can often be thought of as like the women standing on the street in front of the brothel, luring the men in, dressed up really, really cute. And now the Instagram models are kind of like that as well. Um, and I always talk about the attention economy. I just want to like reiterate it. So the attention economy is also a currency. So every like, every comment, every DM, every share, this is a transaction of energy. Economics and energy are basically the same. If you're studying economics and you understand energy, you're gonna get it really easily because it's very much similar. Yesterday I was talking about the sunken cost theory. The sunken cost theory is an economic term, but it can also be used in relationships because it's energy. So when you become an energy alchemizer, an energy master, meaning like not only are you able to like have control of the mind, you're having control of your body, your emotional body, your spiritual body. Once you connect and you're present with that and you're bringing it all together and then able to expand in consciousness of who you are, you'll see the bigger picture. You'll see why attention is a currency. So many models measure their worth in this engagement. So they're looking at their engagement rates and they value that more than the money that they can receive. Did I get 50,000 likes? Oh my gosh, I didn't get 50,000 likes. I need to do something different. Let me look at the trends and see like what people like and see if I can deliver that to continuously get my little micro transactions of energy. I need to extract their attention. I need them to pay attention to me. It's this fear of being unseen that's playing out in their loops. So it's a feedback loop of their life force, right? They need that attention in order to feel alive. Unless they're consciously doing it. But, the feedback loop is harvesting and then it's reinvesting that info that they're getting in those feedback loops of, okay, that one got 30,000 likes, but this one got, 70,000 likes. Let me use that information and reinvest into new content that's going to, drive in so that I'm steadily at that 70,000, likes era. I'm just using random numbers. I don't know. So yesterday we talked a lot about identity, digital identity, but now you're jumping into this hyper-real identity and disassociation. So filters are almost the catfish, right? And then now we can have AI. I have no idea what happened. I just stopped. I glitched. Yeah, maybe somebody called. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb. So now you have these filters. You have AI editing. So you have the deep fakes. And then also surgeries. Plastic surgery is taking a new form altogether. It's wild, the advancement of technology in the plastic surgery world, how wild it is. So you have the women that have the BBLs, you have boob jobs, you have lip injections, you have facelifts, you have all of these procedures that transform a woman from her normal, graceful, aging self to now where you can almost defy aging and gravity with certain surgical procedures. Well, it is false advertisement. It's an identity that you're kind of popping into. Um, and then the aesthetics of this, like when you transform yourself into this identity online to now where it's all like poses and, you know, making all these modifications to your face, making modifications to your body to look a certain way because that's in fashion, it also lends itself to create this fractured digital identity of yourself. So, you know, we talked about the model, the IG model, who deleted all of her 2000 photos and became a whistleblower of this is fake, this is not right. She basically had this identity crisis in live time. I think all that stuff is false advertisement. Well, it kind of is. I mean, I don't want to like talk down to the women that, you know, want to have certain modifications done to their bodies. But like if you're doing that, be really conscious of, you know, why you're doing it. I don't know. Sometimes I think, do I want a surgery? Do I not want a surgery? Just because it's like so prominent in our culture. So models often experience this identity fatigue where they're having to be a certain identity online and then a second one offline. So Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, like they suffered behind the scenes, and even Britney Spears. I mean, look at Britney Spears. She was gorgeous in her younger years. And from having to perform and be this identity of this public Britney Spears, now the private Britney Spears is like, I think in 2009 really was like this mental break for her. And granted, the Blackout album, I think, is one of the best albums in the world. I love it so much. I identified with it. But you can see she had this MK Ultra identity like crack. She had a mental break. These models often experience that fatigue and then depression and then burnout because they have to be constantly on. They have to be constantly doing that. Even the guys are doing it too. Yeah, I think I'll probably end up doing a thing on it. I've been thinking about it, of like the plastic surgery and you know how that is affecting people, because it does go into this digital identity. Now you have this mass market, you have the mass marketplace, and you're looking at the marketplace and you're like, man, I don't measure up to these, you know, Cardi B's and all that stuff, Kim Kardashians. They're all looking really young and beautiful, and you know, this one's 63 and it looks like she's, you know, 40, and you know, how am I going to keep up my image in doing that? So they're constantly being on the commodification of their beauty and their body. I remember back in the day, I thought it was really crazy, but Jennifer Lopez had insured her buttocks, for $1 million. It was insured. That commodification of her body led to having insurance on her buttocks. And then the other reason that these models will experience these things is losing touch with their authentic, unfiltered selves. So, you know, when you're constantly having to be on, you're constantly having to showcase this identity online, and like, you know, not only are you taking, but you're giving. It's like dependent on this system. You're going to like be fractured from your actual authentic self, your unfiltered self. So the porn prana cost is this soul tax. Every time there's a soul tax paid to stay in being desirable, there's a soul tax. Especially if you're like, it's an even bigger tax if it's the bigger the separation is from your identity. So not all IG models, obviously, are what I consider digital sex workers, but and they're not working in that sex work explicitly, but many do implicitly. That there's these blurred lines of, where it goes. Are they using, is their intent to arouse the people that are being attracted to their Instagram or their whatever their social media is that they're on? Are they profiting from it in some way? Are they getting paid to, show up in this with this engagement? Is there some sort of sexual exchange, even if there's not any physical contact, if there's like an emotional exchange? And now they're like getting guys sliding into their DMs and they're like, oh, here's my Cash App. So it's blurred, but it still falls into this digital this digital brothel experience, the ecosystem of it. So when we look at the energy exchange, the monetized sensuality and having some sort of curated experience for the other user, maybe it's like having this BBL and they're just like, oh, okay, watch me, whatever. And the guy's like, oh my gosh, damn, she fine. Let me hit you up on your Cash App. Or maybe it's just automatically there in the thing. Like, here's my Cash App. Here's my Venmo. Send me money. They're still experiencing this energy exchange, even if it's just emotional, it's not physical. So, moving on from that, let's look at this from an archetypal storyline. So, one of the places, so we're going to talk about fantasy. Fantasy is this gateway drug that plugs you into the digital brothel economy. Okay. So, fantasy is this initial draw. Remember when I was saying, like, if you're around a bunch of your friends and somebody mentions some wild, crazy thing that they saw on the internet, your first instant reaction is, let me go see it. I want to see it for myself. So that fantasy is that initial draw, and that's where that curated world will come in. So the model is going to look perfect, that she's going to fulfill that fantasy. She's always available, always available for you. There's no rejection. So in this fantasy world, you're never going to get rejected. It feels safe. There's no messiness. There's no breaking up. There's no, like, you're getting your needs met, whatever they are, whatever you're saying that they are. There's no real vulnerability. So your fears in these fantasy worlds are kind of like whisked away. There's no common relationship hangups in this situation. And here, just like in, brothels, you're going in to have this fantasy fulfilled. Now you can project anything onto the people that you're engaging with. It's curated to your fantasy. Especially with the AI. The AI will just immediately, like, let's go there. I'm not going to say no. You're going to get your fulfillment. So in this fantasy world, there is this mirror world of desire, right? So maybe she'd like me if I had money. Maybe he's lonely too. Maybe this DM will lead to something more and give me my dopamine hits of connection. Digital connection. And this triggers these ancient myths, right? Into the gods and goddesses, the kings and the warriors, the queens, the sirens. So we're going to look at some of the stories. We're we are I include archetypes into my work because we're just hardwired to see the story play out, whatever the story is. So we might be engaging in certain archetypes, right? Maybe we want the good father, maybe we want the good mother, whatever the archetype is, whatever's sitting in our system, we're seeking that. We're seeking to see it play out. And if we're, in our higher mind, we can see the patterns of those playouts of whatever our coping mechanism is. Why am I people pleasing? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? And how do I reverse it? How do I get out of that coping mechanism and into my present self? So, fantasy is the gateway drug, and then dopamine is this fuel that keeps it going. So once you get that hook, once you pass the first gate, and then you're in the labyrinth, you're in the maze. You may not even know it. In The Wizard of Oz, they like landed in the poppy field. In the poppy field, they fell asleep. You fall asleep, and then you like enter this fantasy world. So once you're inside the loop, the dopamine starts hijacking your nervous system. So it's scroll, scroll. Oh, like, I'm a little bit aroused. Comment, wait, and then you get your response reward, right? So it's like a micro hit to your system every time that you're engaging with it. It's like hitting a slot machine. It's like putting money in, hitting the button, waiting. I played quite a bit of slots this year, and I actually won a grand jackpot on a slot machine. But it was, it was a very odd experience. I was like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. Other micro hits are, sugar. Sugar can give you this energy. Caffeine can give you this energy. Eating certain foods might excite you, right? So you're getting these micro hits to your system. And so your brain gets hooked for whatever the reinforced behavior is. So if it's scrolling, you're going to do that. If it's seeking novelty, you're going to do that. This is, in the digital brothel, it's a digital lover's roulette. Which one of the girls is going to give me attention? I'm going to like constantly seek it, constantly chasing that dopamine hit. So sometimes they reply and sometimes they don't. And that's you spinning that roulette wheel. Guys will do this in my DMs quite often. They'll come in, hey, how are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to be available for, but I'm not available for whatever you're wanting in the moment. If you want to work with me, here's my, we can book a call and figure out what services that you can receive from me as far as emotional, social, or even energetic development for you. Okay, that's what I'm available for. And they're like, I don't want to do that. I want you to give me your phone number. Okay, well, why do you want my phone number? I just told you that I'm not available for relationships and that I'm only available for this. And they'll keep pursuing and pursuing and pursuing. And eventually they get frustrated because I had this recently happen to me. I told the guy, look, I'm not available for a relationship. And he kept on pursuing. And I was like, if you want to engage with me, here's my link. Book a session. I don't have time to do that. Okay, well, I'm not available for anything else that you're desiring from me. I don't know what you're wanting from me. And he's like, just give me your number. I don't understand why you can't just give me your phone number. I just told you I'm not available for that. If you want to work with me, here's my link. Figure it out. If you want to engage with me, I'm not going to be engaging with you. And eventually he went like super crazy. He was like, you're a loser. I'm blocking you. I'm like, okay. Like, you don't have to engage with me. I told you what my boundaries were. You didn't want to respect them. I'm not here for engaging with you in that way. And I told you the ways that I would engage with you. And, that's the end of it. It didn't hurt my feelings that he left. I was like, good riddance. Like, he wasn't wanting to be available to the content that I was willing to give, the energy that I'm willing to give. So you have to really look at that reinforcement behavior. So you're going to have some sort of reinforcement. Your brain is going to get hooked into, if you're engaging in this, going on Pornhub, going on OnlyFans, going on whatever these other platforms are, even sliding into the DMs of the Instagram models or sliding into the DMs of anybody that's available online. You have to look at, what am I really trying to get out of this? And even to a certain degree, like the liking on the digital dating apps. So if you're on Tinder or whatever and you're like swiping right or left and it's just like you're getting your hits of dopamine, it's like scrolling. You're just swiping though. Swipe, like, maybe send a comment, hope to get a response, wait, and then maybe you'll get your reward. And a lot of the times, that fatigue of doing that, it's not resulting in your desired outcome, but then you've wasted all your time trying to engage with people. I have a friend who, talks about the digital dating scene quite often, and it's somewhat amusing, but it's also heartbreaking because now your dopamine is being prana farmed. It's like I've been telling him, like, take it offline, go to the grocery store, go to the library, go to a public function and engage with people, look them in the eyes, have this organic connection. And just because you have an organic connection with somebody doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a long-term situation. It might be, but it's like you have to try that in order, like you have to get back to the analog if you want a relationship. I mean, people do, there is some success in digital dating apps, but with the things that I'm learning about it right now, it's really, really difficult to get to there. Sugar is the legal drug. That's crazy. They can't take no. Yeah. And I try to do it really sweetly. I'm just like, look, I'm just not available for that. But they're so used to getting their dopamine hits. They're so used to getting what they ask for online. They're like, I'm asking for it, I'm going to get it. It's like this instant gratification online. And so when somebody puts up a boundary and says, I'm not available for that, I'm only available for this, they can't can't honor that no. They don't honor that sacred no. Which means, yeah, fuck yeah, you're not going to get any access to me because now you're calling me a loser. You're going off the handle. Why would I want to give somebody my time and my phone number, my energy, when they can't even honor the boundary that I'm setting in this moment now? And I get lots of DMs from lots of people, and I've had to block some people because they can't take no. They just go crazy. And it's from that dopamine withdrawal. They're not getting the response that they need. They're not getting the dopamine. In fact, I think you can tell a lot about a person's search history by the way that they interact with people. I can tell the people that are on OnlyFans. You've seen them, Mike. You've seen them come in. Show me your whole body. Do a full body pic. I want to see what that body looked like. And it's like, this isn't OnlyFans. This is YouTube. And not just any YouTube. It's my channel. I'm not here to be tossed around by your dopamine addiction to OnlyFans. I'm not here to be, told how to interact with my audience online. I'm not going to sit here and give in to your perceived needs of being dopamine farmed. Like, I get it. I had to break up with a boyfriend because he could not be present for me. And I told him, I was like, look, when we're together, it's like a dopamine hit. And then when I don't see you for 7 to 10 days, I'm in a dopamine withdrawal and it hurts. What are you going to do about that? Nothing. No response. Oh, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. I can't be in that, like, I'm just not going to sign on to that kind of feedback loop, right? So you have to have boundaries. And it hurt. Like, it hurt. I really liked that guy. I really liked that guy. But he was plugging into too many other areas and not into our relationship. And I had to, like, put my foot down. Sorry, I'm not available for this kind of interaction anymore. Like, I really like you, but I don't like getting dicked around like this either. If we're going to be together, we need to have this common ground. All I was asking for is, where's our relationship going? Are we going to integrate? Or am I just going to be kept on this periphery all the time and, like, called up every couple weeks? Because I'm not available for that. My energy is not available for that. It's too precious. Okay, so you have to have the strong domain boundaries of what you're willing to give online, what attention you're willing to give. So the dopamine can turn it from the fun fantasy into this neurological enslavement. You become a slave to the dopamine hits. And then all of a sudden, when you're trying to interact with people, you're seeing all of the behavior from interacting with these websites. And it's not just online pornography. It's not just OnlyFans. It's not just the digital brothel. This is social media, you know. It's anything social that you're interacting with people, this parasocial interaction. You've been taken from the fun fantasy that you had, that was your gateway drug of, oh my gosh, and we're going to talk about Pleasure Island from Pinocchio. Oh my gosh, we have this fun fantasy. But then all of a sudden you realize that you're a neurological slave to the dopamine hits. That if you don't get it, you're going to feel the breaking apart. And the dopamine withdrawal, I would equate to heartbreak. Okay, the dopamine withdrawal it can be equated to heartbreak because you're wanting the connection. You're wanting the connection with the people. And so you're going to feel it in your chest area, you're going to feel it in your stomach area, that ripping apart. You're being ripped apart because you want to be connected. And you're wanting that fantasy to fulfill you, but then you're becoming a slave to that dopamine hit. And all of a sudden, it just, anytime that you don't have it, you're feeling like you're in withdrawal. I don't know if you've ever withdrawn from any drugs or food, or if you've been heartbroken, like you've broke up with a girlfriend or boyfriend, or even gone through divorce, anything like that. You could feel like your body energetically feels just everything is, all my intestines are on the floor, all my organs are exposed. I feel like Chiron, who's just being eaten by ravens or crows or whatever he was eaten by. Like, my liver is being consumed. Who else was it? I think Prometheus was also physically punished in that way, right? And even to a certain extent, in Nana, she was placed on this hook, and like, she hung there for 3 days, just naked and just hanging on this hook. That's what it feels like, right? You're getting into this enslavement. So your mind knows that it's not real, right? You can say, intellectually, I know that this is not real. Intellectually, I know that I shouldn't be engaging in this interaction. but your body doesn't care. It wants to feel whole again. Like, give me the dopamine so I can put my guts back into my body. Give me the dopamine so it doesn't hurt anymore. And so you become this neurological slave to whatever that fantasy that you're chasing. And this can happen in real life relationships. It happens all the time. I did a post on the tragedy of almost on my Substack, and I also put it on Facebook, and I might put it elsewhere. So the tragedy of the almost, right? In my self-abandonment post that I did yesterday, which thanks, Mike, for letting me know that it got cut off. I think it was all the phone calls. I think I got like 4 phone calls at the end of that, but it is what it is. And I thought that the ending was like even more potent than, what was on there. But your mind knows it's real. Our cognitive mind knows it's real. You can intellectually know it's not real, right? But it feels real. Your body just doesn't care. It wants that hit. It wants the drug. It wants the alcohol. It wants the sex. It wants the gamble, win or lose. A lot of the times people are addicted to the loss in gambling. And the greater the loss, the greater the dopamine hit. They want that sugar. They want that Coke. They want that Pepsi. They want the coffee. What else? They want the money, right? They want the job. Give me the dopamine hits. The body doesn't care. It's like, just give me the dopamine hit. I'll do anything for it. And that's why things like My 600-Pound Life, what's the intervention show? There's an intervention show. Intervention shows are cool. Prison shows are cool. CSI shows are cool. Horror movies are cool because it's giving you dopamine hits. You're getting dopamine hits by seeing all these things. And especially if it's novel, even more dopamine. We're always chasing like the new, whatever is the most novel television show, whatever is the most novel movie. Oh, this one is so cool. It had the most interesting plot twist. So you're hearing all of these reviews. Yeah, man, that movie was like, mind blowing. And it's giving you a dopamine hit. So we're using this dopamine as fuel, and it's fueling this pleasure, right? So fantasy without grounding is going to become trauma. If you're not grounding this exposure of whatever the intimacy, the digital intimacy is, because that's what we're talking about today, but that prolonged exposure is going to likely be ungrounded. And then all of a sudden it becomes trauma. So first and foremost, it can numb real life desires. So people that are in relationships, especially like loveless marriages, chances are they're plugged into some digital format and they're not giving their real life relationship the attention that it needs. Like, it needs to be tended. It's a garden. You're building something with somebody. And you have to be with somebody that's going to be building with you, which is why I, made a really difficult decision. I really liked the guy. I really liked him. I saw a lot of promise. He was really sweet. We had a really good interaction. We would have adventures. And so there is this loss that I had, but I would prefer, instead of continually fracturing and losing myself in the relationship, that I say, no, I'm not available for this. I'm choosing myself, and like, that's it. And part of me like feels sad about it. But then the other part of me is like, thank you. Thank you for loving yourself enough for choosing yourself. So when your fantasy becomes ungrounded, then it happens all the time. So real life desires become numbed. Now your wife isn't beautiful. Now your husband isn't attractive. Okay, and then it distorts the expectations of relationships. If you're online looking at Instagram models all the time and just being hyper aroused by their digital identities, or even on OnlyFans. Yeah, hoarders have that dopamine hit of like getting something. It's an emotional, like, they're buying these things. It's an emotional payment. It's an emotional tax that's making them feel good. But it distorts the expectations of your relationships. So it distorts your friendships. It distorts. I'm not surprised to hear that women are like, oh, I don't have any real life friends. I have a hard time making connections, and my social interactions are suck, to say the least. So their parasocial relationship with all of these social medias has caused this fantasy situation where they can't become grounded, and then all of a sudden whatever their trauma is becomes even more hyper aware for them. So then they're like, nobody wants to be around me. I have a fear of abandonment. Nobody wants to be around me. If people are around me, they're going to reject me. And those traumas become real. So we'll talk about this in a second. So leading, when you're in this fantasy and you're not grounding and you're experiencing the trauma, your central nervous system goes into survival mode. And some of the effects of survival mode, and since we're talking about digital brothels, is erectile dysfunction, right? Disassociation. Like, it wasn't a glitch. I think I'm getting phone calls. And then you have this emotional dysregulation that is occurring. So the emotional dysregulation comes in too. And it's from having your nervous system hijacked. If your nervous system is getting hijacked, they're calling me. I'm almost done, I promise. So the dopamine farm is now becoming this phantom limb of intimacy. You're trying to connect, but it's like phantomly connecting with this digital identity, and it's phantom. It's harvesting it. All right, they're trying to call again. So fantasy is your illusion, dopamine is your addiction, and loneliness is the harvest. It's harvesting that loneliness because it's going to keep that feedback loop going. Sorry, they're going to try and probably call me again. I'm going to tie this. I hope they left a message. I hope this doesn't ruin my stream and cut it off. But I want to talk about Pleasure Island. So Pinocchio has this place called Pleasure Island. So if you've ever seen the movie, I'm assuming everybody's read the book or knows the story, seen the movie. In Pinocchio, they're tempted to go to this place called Pleasure Island, right? So the children, they're kind of just like wandering everywhere. They're supposed to be going to school, but then they're like, oh, we want freedom. We want tobacco. That sounds cool. We want sweets. We want to play. So they have this temptation that is the fantasy of if I can go fulfill that temptation of freedom and getting tobacco and then eating candy and then playing anything I want. That is the temptation. So it comes at a cost though. So in Pinocchio, as they're going to Pleasure Island, they lose their voice, they lose their agency, and they lose their selfhood. And eventually in the Pinocchio story, they turn into donkeys, they turn into beasts, they turn into this animalistic representation of our humanity. So when we're looking at Pleasure Island, they're being lured in, oh yeah, if you go to Pleasure Island, no adult's going to tell you that you can't smoke tobacco. No adult's going to tell you that you can't have that candy. No adult's going to tell you that you can't play. Just come to Pleasure Island and, you know, yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit. They didn't realize that there was going to be a cost of it. So, you know, the boys that end up going there, they turn into these donkeys. I'm getting slightly annoyed. I might have to take off in a little bit, but I do want to like get through Pleasure Island before we like continue on. So when we're looking at the digital parallels here, the temptation of porn and OnlyFans and the endless scrolling to get your seduction without the consequences, you don't realize how giving into that fantasy is actually leading you into this pleasure island where now, if you're in this dopamine addiction, you're in this animalistic need of satisfying, and you're in this survival mechanism which is very animalistic. It, you know, affects that animal brain that's kind of in the back of our, so your cranial nerves and your animal brain is all like nestled back here in the back of your head. And so it's all of that information, all that nerve stuff is like affecting your nervous system. And which is why I'm like, guys, the nervous system, the nervous system, it's the nervous system. So if you're going to, you know, go to the pleasure island of porn or the pleasure island of OnlyFans or the even the pleasure island of online gambling or the pleasure island of online dating, when you're going into that, you're going into this pleasure island. And so when it's too late, that's when you're dopamine farmed. Okay? So the symbolism of the pleasure island in Pinocchio is this loss of boyhood, loss of selfhood, loss of boyhood, and an initiation into mature masculinity due to indulgence. Okay? So that's Pleasure Island. One other story is Neverland. So Peter Pan in Neverland, the story of Peter Pan, I'm sure we've all heard of this one. The temptation is this eternal childhood, this eternal youth with no rules, no time. Time is not a part of Neverland, which is why Hook was so afraid of the crocodile that had the tick-tock. The crocodile represented the time. The hospital, so maybe I'll pop on later. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Bye.